It's been awesome. It's been a great time. As you can tell, I'm already starting to lose my voice as a result of how awesome it is. And I'll tell you that the past couple of days, it took me back a little bit. So in addition to my day job, I'm also an adjunct. And back in 2017, I was teaching a class to MBA candidates at Ohio State. It was a digital marketing class. And after one of the classes, one of the students came up and she said, hey, that was really interesting information, but I'm curious, when you're talking about social media, why weren't you talking about QQ or this thing called TikTok or these other things? And I said, that's a really, really good question. And the reason I'm not teaching you about those things is that I actually didn't know that they existed, right? But I was very convicted. And so I went into the lab and I did some research. And at the time I was on a bit of a speaking tour as well. And so I was like, okay, I have to figure out a way to impart this knowledge that she just imparted in me, which is that just because we don't know about it or use it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist and that it's not important to someone. So then after noticing that QQ had like 1 billion people that were using it, just not in the United States, right? And this little thing called TikTok, right, that I would then put onto a slide with all the other social media logos, and I'd ask people to go along with me and name the platform, right? And we'd go Facebook, we'd go Twitter, we'd go Snap, and then we'd get to this little penguin, and people would be like, penguin, right? It's like, no, that's QQ, and that gets TikTok. People are like, I don't know, right? That would work for like 9 to 12 months where I could play that game, and the next thing you know, of course, there's no value in that whatsoever anymore because everybody knows what TikTok is because it blew up. And the reason I'm bringing this up is it's been really interesting for me this week when I think back then to 3 or 4 years ago when I got to Atmosphere and we would do things like this, and it was us running around basically saying like we're the QQ, right? Like we got a lot of people and they love our stuff, but like nobody knows about it. And so then fast forward to the conversation we had this week, and I've told a few of you at dinner last night, like I don't even know what I'm doing on stage tomorrow because pretty much everybody is at least familiar with us. So I will, though, tap back into my background as an educator, and it's all about learning objectives to me, right? So if we're going to spend time doing something together, we should have some learning objectives. So really, at this point, my goal for the next few minutes is just a couple of things. One, for the handful of people in here that still might not know what Atmosphere is, you had to have skipped the happy hour last night to not know what Atmosphere is, but if you don't know what we are, that you know what we are, right, and why we do what we do. The second is, if you're familiar, but you've just been evaluating for a while and not sure, maybe it sparks an insight for how you might activate. And then third, if you're an existing partner, and thank you all for your partnership, if you're an existing partner, maybe we learn a little bit something new about the ways that we activate on the platform, and that sparks another insight for you as well. Fair enough? Yeah. All right, let's roll. So speaking of insights, Atmosphere, its foundation was created and started as an insight by our founders, and that insight was that the way that we consume TV inside the living room is great. It's not broken, right? Watching these folks, watching Stephen A. Smith talk about sports, watching episodic information, episodic content, there's nothing wrong with that. It's becoming probably even better day by day. However, once we leave the living room and we go out into the world and we do the things that we do, whether that's a bar or a restaurant or get an oil change, that viewing experience is much, much different. And nobody is going to their local restaurant for lunch and saying, hey, can you put on daytime TV? Like, I need to catch up on Judge Judy. So the insight was that once we do leave the living room, that we need to entertain people in a different way. So what if we reimagined the way that happens and we start to put snackable content together, right? Or maybe if we want to show sports, we only show highlights and stats and what's coming next. What if we just thought a little bit differently about the way that we talk to people when we talk to them based off of what they're doing and what they want? And it worked so well, starting back in between 2015 and 2017, we were incubated within another company and then spun out. It worked so well that a lot of people were watching it. We actually had to create a bunch of more channels. And all of these channels are designed in a bespoke nature to ensure that wherever you are, whether that's in a veterinarian's clinic and you're with your kids and you just want to watch cute pet videos on Pause TV, or whether you're at the gym and you want to watch other people working out to get inspired, that there's a solution for you. And so as that has scaled, what it's done is it's provided this opportunity to really pioneer and change the way that the last frontier of TV is, right? And the way that it's being designed for the consumer, more so than anybody else. So regardless of where that is and what that means for marketers, what we've ultimately done is created some new scale, a new lane, and new optionality for the way in which that we activate outside the living room. Is it working, Jake? Yes, it's working, right? 150 million people, and this is where that thought came to mind this week about going back to 2017 is half of all US adults, it's almost hard for me to say it on stage because it just seems like such a big number, but it's so big, it's the biggest media company that a lot of people had never heard of until recently. So reaching 150 million people, half of all US adults each month, and then the data tells us that's 2 to 3 times a month that we're reaching each one of these individuals. So the biggest thing that we hadn't heard of until we had. But that network, and I know a lot of folks, maybe even some in this room, are still like, yeah, you guys like that bar network, right? So yes, we are. We're the bar network, but we're also the restaurant network. We're also in airports. We're also in gyms. We're in doctors' offices. We're in automotive centers. You name it. If there's a consumer-facing TV, there's an opportunity for us to be in front of that audience. Here's a slide that says, yay, we're number 2. Who's here for silver medals today, right? Honestly, I feel like this is something that you do just to say, like, all right, it's a little self-deprecating, but it's not. At the end of the day, when we think about consuming this content inside the home and all the optionality that we have consuming inside the home, and then all those options that we have to either skip or suppress any type of paid messaging that gets in front of us, what we think is really important is that when you're in front of an Atmosphere TV device, that there is no optionality to skip that paid advertisement, right? So our options for how we put this messaging in front of folks is becoming, of course, increasingly fragmented, but also ensuring that we're getting our messaging in front of folks each time that we put it out there. But again, not super cool to be number 2. So what we really want to think about is who are the folks that we're talking to. We are only talking to the goers, the doers, and the spenders. We are only talking to folks who have actually left their house, left their living room, and are out in the marketplace with a wallet in one hand, keys in the other, and ready to do things and spend money. So, of course, comes the question, I love this question. So many client calls, so many meetings. Well, what are you, right? What are you, Jake? What are you guys? And so when we think about it, we think about the 2 very defined subsets of the industry, and we've essentially just converged those 2 things. So when we think about OTT CTV, that is actually, by definition, if we're getting really technical, that is what we are. It is OTT CTV, it is IP addressable, it is digitally enabled, right? 100% non-skippable inventory, so CTV by definition. However, the difference is where we're consumed, right? So once you leave the living room, then we fit into another classification. At the end of the day, we've converged these 2 things, and we actually don't really care, if I'm being honest, right? What we care about is that we can drive results for you as agencies, you as brands, that we can get the outcomes that you're looking for. And so again, of course, over the course of the past few years, what we've done is we've partnered with every measurement partner that we can to say, does this work? And the studies come back again and again, and they say that it does. It drives affinity. It drives brand awareness. It drives store visits, right? It drives sales lift. So really what it comes down to it is, can we get the outcomes? We can. As long as we can partner and have that strategy in place with those hard KPIs, we can drive results. And we think that's really important. So in this new scale, this new opportunity in a world in which viewership and inventory can be on the decline as it pertains to those buckets that we fit into, this is a new opportunity with a ton of scale. It's a new lane. These are previously untargetable, low-intention ways of reaching folks, and we've made it very intentional, very targetable. And in doing so, we can look at that from a context perspective. We can look at that as proximity to purchase. And then, of course, and we heard a lot this week already, this opportunity to truly own sports and to do it in a cost-effective way with a lower barrier to entry and allow ourselves to align with the sports fandom. So when we think about the context of the environment that we're sitting in, so whether you're a brand that's trying to push booze in front of folks, and that context is in bars, 20,000 bars across the country at the place that we pour, makes total sense, right? We know a lot about the context in which folks are consuming this content. Or if you're into fitness enthusiasts, and that's a target segment for you, and you know that you want to find these fitness enthusiasts, and you do that across the entirety of the omni-channel process, but what better time to get in front of a fitness enthusiast than when their shoes are laced up, they've got their workout gear on, and they're actually on the treadmill. Or beyond that, what about the travel enthusiast? What better time to talk to a travel enthusiast than while they're sitting at the airport? I know for me personally, as I travel around the country for work mostly, is I'm constantly thinking, which of these towns do I want to take my wife and my 9-year-old and 6-year-old, and which do I definitely never want to take my kids to, right? Which are those opportunities? So in those mindsets, in these contextual environments, is our opportunity to speak to folks in a little bit of a different way. The other thing that we think is really important is this proximity piece. So we have the scale across the entire country, across every major DMA, but what it comes down to is this targetability of this network is all the way down to the individual device and streaming partners. If you want to wish happy birthday to your favorite bartender at your favorite watering hole at 5 p.m. on a Friday, we can do that with an ad. However, what's important to your brand or to your initiative in this campaign, we look at that proximity and we know that there's going to be an opportunity to drive folks from a very close proximity to that end destination, whether that's a brick and mortar to push product or whatever that point of purchase is, there's an opportunity to drive that. When we talk about truly owning sports, we know that so much of the sports content is consumed inside the home, but we also know that fandom doesn't just exist inside the home. Fandom exists everywhere. And so when folks go outside their living room and they go to consume this content with their friends and family and loved ones, they're doing that in other places. We see a 40% increase in the foot traffic to atmosphere venues when live sports is on. There's an opportunity here to truly own that fandom in a different, unique, and bespoke way. In doing so with the creative and the way that we talk to folks, it's important to reimagine the way that we do that as well. So our friends over at Pepsi said, we love it. We want to test this in some of our markets. Let's take a look at our traditional spot here, and then we'd like to customize that to different audience segments. So we took the existing creative, and then we looked at it and said, okay, well, what if the folks that are in bars in Pittsburgh, bars, restaurants, and other venues, what if the folks that are in this area that are truly fans of the Steelers, they get a little bit of a different look than the Bills do, a little bit of a different look than the Bengals do, than the Patriots do, so forth and so on. So really creating that connection with the audience at scale across the entire country. Another example, our friends over at RAM. They said, hey, here's the spot that we'd like to run. This is the current creative. This is the initiative that we want to go after. But also, we want to make sure that in this audio optional environment, that we're creating a spot and a piece of messaging that has no degradation in the quality of the consumption, despite the fact that it's an audio optional piece. So a very simple solution here, some high impact text. But we don't have to stop there. We can say, okay, well, what do we really want folks to do? Well, we want folks to go buy a Ram truck. So why don't we dynamically insert the closest location that you can go and buy a Ram truck based off of the dealership network, right? So targeted from a contextual BT perspective, but then dynamically inserted to make sure that it's very, very clear what we want them to do and where we want them to do it. And then if we pull this all together and we say, okay, well, how does this all work when you put great creative, or great messaging, great creative, high impact in front of the right people at the right time to influence decision making? Well, it turns out it works pretty well. So this initiative that we did with Jack in the Box earlier this year was a way to really get out of their normal way of doing things, take a piece of creative that was customized to the platform, this highly engaging, mouth-watering content, put it in front of folks in bars and restaurants between the hours of 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. And I was going to ask if anybody went for some late night Jack in the Box last night, but I realized you're probably not going to raise your hands. But high craving time, right? And then we measured whether or not that worked. And turns out 36% lift in store visits within these windows. We were able to put that the savory messaging in front of folks while they were getting hungry and drinking that extra Miller Lite or that extra Tito's and soda, and then say, hey, when you're done with that, come get that late night snack with us. So did so well, it actually is an award-winning campaign for us. So that's the message I wanted to share today. Hopefully it had some value. I can see some eyes are still waiting for that caffeine to kick in, but hopefully there was at least a little bit of value. And so I'll just leave it with this. Again, whichever bucket you fall into, you didn't know us before today, you knew us but you haven't done anything with us, or you're an active partner. If there's anything that we can do to help, myself, Ryan Folgate, Max, raise your hands. We're here and we're happy to have a conversation with you before the sessions wrap tomorrow morning. Cool? Yeah. All right, appreciate y'all.